just clarify something. In the city of Commerce, it's a casino. It's called the Commerce Casino. And he stated that the city council members would have liked to have come, but because of lack of resources, they were unable to make it. I too am an elected official in my city, and I know for a fact that if they were to come, they're not going to pay out of their own dime. They're going to charge the city. And so I found many of his comments disingenuous. I'm usually not a betting man, and I say this sitting inside a casino, but I put good money to bet that he's not paying out of his own pocket either to be here. He was paid, and he was given comments to make to show up. And I want to crouch that in the sense that ever since the sorry, I'm speechless right now. But ever since the regulations for federal recognition were enacted, the first submission was only 88 pages, and that was in the early, I guess, 1979 or 1980. It was only 88 pages, and the turnaround time was very small. Today, tribes are submitting hundreds of thousands of pages and are spending millions of dollars. Why? Because of gentlemen like Mr. Mendoza. He represents Commerce Casino. But you also have neighboring and competing federally recognized tribes that have their own casinos that are going against non-federally recognized tribes through this process, and they have large pockets. If we're going to start with the assumption and the fact that Native Americans are on the lower end of the social-economic scale, right? And you expect them to compete against entities like Commerce Casino? But what if you have a consortium, Commerce Casino, the Bicycle Club, Hawaiian Gardens, and then some of the other neighboring tribes in the desert? And you want a non-federally recognized tribe to compete against those powerhouses? You could have given my tribe 100 years to go through the federal recognition process, and I'll tell you what, you could have given them another 100 and they wouldn't have understood the process, nor would they have been able to develop the political savviness that it takes to navigate through this process. All of those other federally recognized tribes and casinos like that, they're in the political game. They have their contacts. They have their lobbyists. And that's something that's not talked about. I understand we're talking about rules, and we're talking about proposed rules and what have you. We're talking about transparency. But it's individuals like Mr. Mendoza. Mr. Mendoza, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I don't know you personally. I'm sure you're a nice guy. But you represent something. You represent something. And we need to put that out there. We need to talk about that. And that's not being talked about. But I'm glad you showed up because you represented a point. Now, I just have 3 questions, and I'll get off the mic. The OFA cites inconsistencies in interpretation. That's one of the reasons why there's proposed rules. There's proposed changes to regulations. Can they give examples? Can they give examples in the past where they have gone wrong? You talk about that you've been inconsistent, but can you give us like a top 10? How does a suspended tribe or re-petitioning tribe get their information back? You have about 5 or 6 suspended tribes. How do they, if according to the proposed regulations, if those tribes go through federal recognition again, or the process of, then how do they get the information that they submitted to you back so that they can either resubmit it, edit it, take things out? How does that happen? Can we expedite that process, even if it's at the expense of the tribe? And I had 3, but I'll just leave it at 2. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Just another housekeeping rule. The public forum is a great forum because we get to hear a lot of different perspectives on this issue. We know this is a very emotional issue, but please direct all your comments to us. We're the ones here accepting comments, so to the degree you can, try to limit all your comments directed towards us, the federal officials. Thank you.
I'd like to let my chairwoman speak first. If you don't mind, I can respond to one of the previous comments. The proposed rule does provide that if a petitioner re-petitions, they do not have to resubmit the materials, that the department will rely on materials already submitted. There's no bar against submitting additional materials, but there's no need to get the materials back and resubmit. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Chairperson, gentleman here.
Good morning. I am Chairwoman Teresa Romero of the Winnebago Band of Mission Indians, a Hachiman Nation. On behalf of my people, thank you for the opportunity to participate in regulation reform, even if by public comment only. While we stand, we could spend the next few days discussing the atrocities suffered by my people at the hands of non-natives and the current recognition process. I am here today to support regulation reform and ask specific questions that in turn will benefit not just my people, but all Native tribes. As a California tribe, the new regulation reform still falls short in providing sufficient accommodation to the unique circumstances faced by most California tribes for the past 250 years. The responses to the first rule public hearings indicated the proposed rule would add objective standards in the criteria where possible to ensure consistency while retaining some flexibility to account for the circumstances faced by each petitioner. We have been unable to identify the flexibility for California tribes. We are formally requesting specific regulations that will allow for California tribes to be treated fair and given equal opportunity to be federally recognized. If there are no plans to incorporate these types of accommodations or flexibility, because California tribes like mine had to go underground with our Indianness, as documented by historians, anthropologists, genealogists alike, what types of evidence could California tribes submit to meet the reform regulations as they exist in the proposed rule? For example, to stay alive, we identified ourselves as Mexican or Caucasian in census records and vital records. But in reality, we weren't accepted by either ethnicity. And we knew we were Indian because our ancestors, our family members told us we were, but never to go to school or church and say it was so. My question refers to criteria B regarding evidence demonstrating community, specifically 83.11b1, Roman numeral 9. Children of members of geographical areas were placed in Indian boarding schools or other Indian educational institutions. My nation submitted enrollment to California Sherman's Indian School, only to be rejected as evidence because it was deemed as self-identification versus outside entity identification of our aunties and uncles as Indians. Further, because many California tribes are often identified collectively as mission Indians versus specific tribes associated to specific missions, this evidence was further negated. Can you define how the newly proposed regs will be applied, specifically 8311B1, Roman numeral 9? Furthermore, since criteria B requires natives to demonstrate distinct community from 1934 to present, is 8311B1, Roman numeral 9 stating petitioners must submit enrollment evidence for every consecutive year since 1934? Can you respond?
I don't know that we have thought about that.
Okay, I'll go on. Let me just finish up.
I'm glad though that you pointed out that that is an addition that I think I forgot to say in the presentation, that we are explicitly allowing for records of Indian boarding school enrollments in support of the criteria for community. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. But if you have specific ideas on how the proposed rule can better address the unique issues in California, then we certainly welcome that.
Thank you, we will be submitting that. I'm going to wrap up after my next question. My next question refers to the same criteria, 8411B1, only now Roman numeral 2, social relationships connecting individual members. Can you define what is considered a social relationship and what types of evidence would support that definition? We realize these types of questions that should be answered by technical assistance. However, in our experience in 2008 with technical assistance, it is that they provide no assistance at all.
Thank you. So, clarification of what is a social relationship?
Yes. Finally, in regards to addressing open opposition to regulation reform, as mentioned earlier, for example, the state of Connecticut. In other words, once the proposed rule has once again successfully passed through the OMB and other government agencies and protocols, how will you answer the states or state representatives or local municipalities that openly oppose reform?
I'm not sure I understand the question, I'm sorry. Can you repeat it?
Sure. In regards to addressing open opposition, for example, the City of Commerce or the state of Connecticut that has clearly identified they are against regulation reform, how does your office plan to address that?
Well, I think the fact that we're moving forward with looking at how to improve the process, it's not a question of whether, we're looking more at how.
Okay.
So it is a priority of this administration to get some final rules in place so that we improve the process. I think it's been well established on record that improvements are appropriate.
Thank you. In closing, I would just like to thank you and all the representatives here today and commend everyone in the reforming process, what has so long been a tragic process for Native Americans. May you travel home safely until we meet again. May the Creator guide your efforts towards justice and fairness for all people.
Thank you, and I think our Katie, our representative from the Office of the Solicitor, may have some input and help clarify too.
So you spoke to the need in California to sort of go underground and hide your Indianness, and that sort of relates to our proposal to remove criteria A, external identification, so that we can focus more on internal communities, internal political autonomy, and less on external identification of a tribe. Also, with regard to the boarding schools, the proposed language talks about basically kids coming from the same geographic area and being put in boarding schools. So I think that's how we're thinking right now, that will function, basically showing that these kids do live in a community together, did live in a community together.
Thank you. And so we have this gentleman here in the queue, and then followed by Miss over here, and then the gentleman in the back. So,
Good morning. My name is Rosemary Campbell. I'm the chair of the Moetma Tribe. Council members, would you please stand in regards to pay respects to the chairs that are here representing our tribe and council members and members at large. Moetma's, I'm saying this statement first. Moetma's history has been well documented, submitted to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Our legal cases of challenging the Bureau in regards to previous recognition has been submitted as well. I just want to say I'm very honored to be among the chairs, and I share your struggle. And I can only say to you and advise you, keep your spiritual place for your people, and especially the youth. Advise your members remind them of their spirituality. Remind them that you too have their struggles, whether it be acknowledged by the government or economically, or even having adversarial relationships with recognized tribes. And pray like I do every day. Pray that somehow that you can create a partnership with recognized tribes. We're all related. Believe me when I say it. We're all related. I want to end my comments again, I'm thanking you, and I pray that you will be given justice, and that you will have acknowledgement. But again, I too pray for that, because I'm not yet, my people are not yet acknowledged. But we acknowledge yourselves. Do you really think, and this is the question, again, to the staff, do you really think anyone here at the room, they need help writing their history? Do you really think that they have a problem with who's their father, who's their mama? I don't think so. Again, I'm not speaking for all the people in this room. I'm speaking for a wet one. And I'm just giving you my point of view. Now, I want to thank again the chairs, the councils, the consultants that have worked with us. I thank the public. I wouldn't have been able to complete the petition with my council and members the way the Bureau wanted without my consultants, or the consultants of the tribe. Now let me acknowledge the Bureau of Indian Affairs being and listening to your voices. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we move on, I know we still have several people who would like to make comments, but I think we're going to need a quick break. So if we could reconvene in 10 minutes, and then everyone can gather their thoughts and hopefully get some time. Thank you.
Yeah. No, they didn't call it. They just they give a 10-minute break and they're gonna you guys and then you guys are out. I mean, should we go tell the Bureau of Indian Affairs office? It's been a big hardship to travel here. Viola, it's been a big hardship to get here. United Native Americans, Quanah Brightman gave me a ride here, and they're asking him to leave. He is my transportation.
They gave me this. They brought me outside and said, they gave me this. I didn't sign it. They never gave me any notification on why they wanted me to apply from me. From my understanding, this is probably me.
At least let us stay through the conference, through the consultation. No, I mean, I was.
This is what they just did.
Yeah, this is weird. I guess I gotta file a claim against them, that's what they're saying. But it doesn't make any sense. I mean, they never gave me any notification saying that it was barred from here or what reason.
be stranded here if they make you leave. I'm gonna have to write a you back to Sacramento, Willa. Well, I'll get you with you. How are you? Good. The list that I'm Cesar Caballero with New York. The list that I speak of is Senate Resolution 115, and it was published by Congress, the state of California, in collaboration with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So I was saying I don't understand whether the name change switched. It talks about them, yes, and it talks about the judgment rolls, and the Congress tells them, hey, you can't make these new lists on these reservations. You have to go by the California judgment roll, and it's Congress directing the floor that that's what they have to do. Yes, I will submit it. Can I show it to you? Let me show it to you. Excuse me.
So are you still
Copy. Here's the appendix with the names of the tribes. Yes, I plan on sending in an email before the August 1 deadline. I want to experience this and then conclude my, correct, with the names of the tribes. And now, like various, it's no longer that name. Now it's like, and then it's a completely different tribe. It's like, how is it that? Yes. Standards for change, more effective standards for changing the name. Because it's something that's like, how is it that you're not even Miwok? How are you taking over our reservation and building this? And when that happens, if it's because of Trail of Tears or they got relocated or not, what about the existing government? Because it's not the same government, not the same tribe, but they get relocated under a completely new name. They have no identification. It's like, okay, well, you guys are relocated, you're here, but what about the existing government? Because our records have existed from 1900 all the way. I put this federal ID. I emailed it to the office, consultation.gov. Yes. Everyone else considers them Social Security Office, United States borders. That CDMV is like a federal document. It's like a federal passport. I don't know if you know this, but we, the Indians that possess those cards, we don't need a passport to cross the border. Yes. I don't know if you knew that, but that's like quite incredible. It's like, wow. I didn't know that until I grew up at a certain point. It's like, wow, I could use it for this. We get. Yeah, thank you. Do you have a card? Thank you. Appreciate that. Caitlin. Hang on. Thank you, Caitlin. Sorry that I don't have a card on me. I did run out a while back. We did submit a letter back in 2003, and the Bureau responded and said, hey, we received your letter for regarding recognizing these documents. but then they never ever responded back on that. I still have the letter. It says, we received your request to recognize the 1900 federal census, 1910 federal census. We participated in the IRA, or we voted, but we voted no in the IRA. So, you know, we should have like the same status as the Navajo Nation, because they also voted no. Yes, and I'm excited. I mean, all the prerequisites that you guys have on there, we fall under all of them. From the Indian schools to the IRA to the 1900 records to currently, you know, recognized as Indians. We possess federal Indian IDs. We hold our meetings.
Our regulations don't change the way the process we use CDID cards. So we haven't done that yet in the process. So if you feel like that's something the process should do,
Right.
yeah.
And I'll show you that little piece right here where they're talking about it. Those highlighted spots right there that are in yellow, it talks about they're trying to like put a new group onto a reservation. It's like, you can't do that. They have to possess the roll numbers. Congress is saying we've taken 150 years to create these roll numbers. We're not just going to throw it out the window, and we have fiduciary obligations to these people. Yeah. Congress told the BIA to create the rolls, and then we were all issued our those CDIDs. As far as we knew, we had our federal, we had our rolls, our cards.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on the Senate perspective.
It's hard to get that out sometimes and explain that because of education and research, you know. Appreciate talking to you, and I'll be at the meeting in the afternoon, consultation. Well, I can also email you. Awesome. Thank you. We're ready to get started. Talk to anybody? What did they tell you? We didn't find Maryland yet, right? Well, just let them know you're going to finish. We're going to finish your meeting.
We're going to go ahead and get started, so if you could take your seats, that would be great. Thank you.
I'll write down my email address for you. Yes. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you for coming. Yes. Oh, yes. Right on. I remember. Nice to meet you, Deborah. It's been a long time. Awesome. Nice to meet you, Gloria. Appreciate meeting you very much. Uh-huh. Yeah. Right. Right. I could see. Right. But you have federal ID, right? You have a CRN roll number and all that, right? You have your Indian card that says Miwok on it from the Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs? Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, they used to give us small ones, now they're giving the bigger ones. But they hold the same fiduciary obligations. It shouldn't matter where we're at. We all have our federal IDs. Even if we lost a piece of land, we still possess our federally recognized IDs. How do they all of a sudden not recognize part of the ones that hold the federal list? It doesn't make sense. Yes. It extends quite a bit. It's pretty extensive. Yes, I do. Ron Rhymes? No. Kind of. Yes, other option. You used to go? Okay, yes. Okay. Well, that, I mean, yeah, I have a list. I mean, welcome to. Email me. I'm at contact@newrocktribe.org. Contact@newrocktribe.org.
And I'm with your very specific regional office. And people have been talking about the ACCIP report. It's been mentioned a few times, so I just, for the record, wanted to let everyone know that the ACCIP report is the Advisory Council on California Indian Policy. And there was a series of 8 reports on various topics, including federal recognition and termination and an overview of California Indian history. And there was a report initiated by Congress. They did have several recommendations in there, actually quite a lot of recommendations and just kind of just status and history. So just for the record and for all of you, the ACCI report is called the Advisory Council on California Indian Policy. It's available online as a PDF at the executive summary. Yeah, no, if anyone is familiar with it, there's 2 like Kupa York Karuk caps, like basket caps, on the cover of the book. So that's, I know a lot of people also refer to it as that, the report by its looks. So yeah, the IA can make copies. Okay.
Thank you. So I believe we had a queue with 2 individuals in it, so we're going to start there.
Good morning. My name is Victor Farfan. I'm a city council member from the city of Hawaiian Gardens. And I'd like to share some concerns about the aspects of the new rules for tribal recognition. We believe the new proposed rule significantly weakens the standards for groups seeking recognitions and stacks the deck in favor of petitioners to the detriment of everyone else, including other tribes.
Even worse, it appears to do nothing at all to end reaffirmation or other types of executive recognition that bypasses all objective criteria and analysis by experts, which should be required of all. For these reasons alone, we cannot support the proposed rule. However, there are non-policy aspects of the entire rulemaking process that is very troubling to us as well. We have been made aware that there are a number of individuals employed by the BIA who are members of non-recognized tribal groups
that have been involved in the drafting of these rules. It is a clear conflict of interest, and they should have never been included in any works or discussions on these topics. But unfortunately, their participation is not our biggest concern. The biggest problem is with Larry Roberts, their boss. With all due respect to you, Mr. Roberts, you should have never been involved in any aspects of the proposed changes. Your past history of working for years as a paid lobbyist for unrecognized tribal groups and off-reservation projects cannot be ignored. At best, it means that you were a former outsider who is now an insider, designing the rules for recognition reform. At worst, it is a conflict of interest and presents a set of temptations that not even the most ethical individual would find hard to completely insulate themselves from. It calls into question whether or not the public can have the confidence that relevant decisions on the proposed rules were made on a basis of sound public policy. It also makes it fair game to ask to what extent the proposed changes might benefit causes and clients you have previously championed, as well as your friends and former associates who are still working on these causes. It is my understanding that as Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs, you have been the point person for the BIA throughout the entire rulemaking process. Your presence here today running meetings and 3 others that have gone throughout the country would seem to bear witness to that fact. The being a point person no doubt gives you great influence in the drafting and shaping of the proposed rulemaking changes. It also likely places many important discretionary decisions directly in your hands. It is easy to anticipate that at least some of these decisions you have the effect of making it easier for certain petitioners to gain federal recognition by removing obstacles they face under the current regulation. Since common sense tells us that since you spent so many years lobbying and doing legal work for unrecognized groups, you should certainly be familiar with the particular circumstances that are known exactly that would change in the process and would most benefit those changes for recognition, regardless of whether your knowledge of these groups' specific needs ever came into play. It would potentially cast a shadow of doubt over the single decision that has been made in the entire process. Public disclosure records for the U.S. Senate shows that for many years prior to joining the executive branch, you and your firm you worked for received huge sums of money for various unrecognized groups seeking federal recognition. It also got a lot of money for several recognized tribes seeking off-reservation and urban casino gambling, backed by non-tribal casino developers. And I understand you have accused yourself of any involvement, which you previously clients, firms, and associates when it comes to matters of casino gambling. That was the right thing to do, and I applaud you for doing so. However, this begs the question that since you did not recuse yourself from involvement in the gambling casino proposal,
why did you not do the same for matters involving tribal recognition as well? Whether or not we like it, tribal recognition and casino gambling are linked. Becoming recognized is a necessary prerequisite to having land taken into trust, which is then turned to the necessary prerequisite of opening a gambling casino. So the impact of your petition in the process that radically changes the rules whereby tribes are recognized has the potential to benefit not just your former recognized clients, but your former gambling development clients as well. The ease of the rules for recognition to more newly recognized tribes you get, the more new recognized tribes you have, the more potential casinos you can develop. Even the most ethical individual would not be unable to learn the rule changes that would benefit their former clients. So why on earth have you put yourself in a position of involving yourself with such rules, knowing that any time your objectivity could be legitimately called into question and the credibility of the entire process is fairly undermined? I want to respect everyone's time here, but I do need to point out a few other things. Mr. Roberts currently does have a number of associates that are still working to represent a number of tribes, non-tribals. One such tribe is the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina. State records also show that he was paid over $1.2 million to lobby for federal recognition of Native Hawaiians. In addition to that, their firm, well, he himself, was paid at least $180,000 in attempts to get the Tohono tribe recognized. In addition to that, I want to point out just 4 points, and then I'll close.
If I could just interrupt you for a moment, I want to point out that Deputy Assistant Secretary Roberts is not present.
I recognize
and
that.
He is unable to respond to any of these allegations that you're making.
Right, but I need to have this present for the record.
I want you to be able to state your piece, but I'd also like to emphasize that the decision-making is not, one person does not hold the power to make the decisions on what the regulation says. This is a long process that goes through many layers of approval. As I mentioned, it's approved by the Office of Management and Budget, but even before it gets to that point, it goes through several layers within the Department of the Interior. So I just wanted to make that clear, but I do want you to be able to say your piece, so I apologize for interrupting.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, this is a public forum, so there's some remarks that I need to disclose, and that's why we're here. So in closing, once again, I want to state that I do not intend to be disrespectful or accuse you of unethical behavior in raising these issues, but I need to state four issues. You and your former partners have a very long history of working for unrecognized groups in controversial casino projects. Recognition of as many new tribes as possible is desirable for your former clients, partners, and employers. There can be no doubt that your proposed rule long established standards for recognition thereby makes it easier for any group to get recognized. 4, most if not all of these newly recognized tribes will be pursuing off-reservation or urban casino locations of the kind that you are paid to lobby on behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, and another clarification I'd like to make. The tie between recognition and casinos, I just want to point out that once a tribe is recognized, it is not automatic that that tribe can then gain once a recognized tribe wants to take land into trust, there's a process under 25 CFR 151 where they need to apply to get the land taken into trust, and that process includes notice and participation of local governments in the state, and then to get approval for casino-style gaming. There's another set of requirements and process that they need to go through under 25 CFR Part 292. And Katie may have more to add. Right, as part of 292.
Even when you don't engage in Class 3 gaming, casino-style gaming, you still have a lot of procedural steps to go through, even for, Class 1 and Class 2 gaming.
My name is Quanah Parker Brightman. I'm Executive Director of the United Native Americans, and I'm also an enrolled member of the Lakota Nation and a citizen also of the Creek Nation. I have dual citizenship. And I came here in support of course, the Miwok Nation and, of course, a number of the tribes here in the state of California and nationally who are looking for federal recognition to have an equal opportunity to their land, an equal opportunity to all their resources, and of course, the claims to their ancestral lands, which all of us need. My grandfather once told me, he said, every day they make new people, but they don't make new land. And we should value every piece of our land, every single piece, because our ancestors sacrificed a lot for us to be here today. My father, many of you may know him, his name is Dr. Lehman Brightman. He's one of the founders of the Civil Rights Movement. Now, my mother, Trudy Brightman, is also one of the founders. I represent them in the best way that I can each and every single day. And I'd like to bring voice to some of the things that I've seen as an organizer for over 10 years now. We've organized demonstrations against the tribes who have practiced this genocidal campaign of disenrolling. What is the Bureau of Indian Affairs going to do about all the people and the tribes who have vanquished and disenrolled some of their citizens? Why? Now, the blood quantum which the Bureau of Indian Affairs imposes on us as tribal members, we have to be 1/4 or more blood by the Bureau standards for us to receive services from the federal government. I recommend that all of us as tribal people and our tribes, whether we're federally recognized or non-federally recognized, go through lineal descent, where we can prove through our documentation of our ancestry, not to go by blood, because what are we going to do when we're not 1/4 or more? Every day there's new people being born, but what are we going to do when we're not able to recognize them by the blood quantum? What are we going to do then? We're going to be extinct. We'll be extinct within the less than 100 years. if we don't change these policies that the Bureau of Indian Affairs, that was founded under the War Department, continue to impose upon each and every one of us. Now, in closing, I recommend that the Ohlone Nation from San Francisco and all the other petitioners who are seeking federal recognition and equality be granted that. I ask that from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Department of Interior. Please give them federal recognition, for they need it, they want it, and most importantly, they deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a queue.
Hi, my name is Erin Young, and I am a Native American. I may not look Native American, but I was, came out of a family, and I have roll numbers from my great-grandfather, actually my grandfather, and he had to assimilate off of his reservation that was then stolen from us. And if any of you guys have experienced any of this, you know what I'm going through. I'm just a peon when it comes to Native Americans. I know that I have history, just like he stated. I can prove it literally. But then when you start to look at where I come from, I have 4 sons. I struggle, seriously. I'm Native American, and then I have tribal cousins who are just a touch away from me. That by blood and by heritage, I'm cousins to them. But for some reason, they have a casino, and they get $40,000 a month. And here I am on TANF. What is TANF? Okay, so TANF is ran by the casino who stole my tribal identity, and then they kick me off when they find out who I was. Okay, so it's really kind of weird when you stand in a peon position and you look out and you see all these Native Americans and all the people who claim to be Native American even though they don't have a BIA ID. My grandfather was issued a roll number, but my mother was not, I was not, my children were not. Where's the anthropologists that are supposed to go out and say, hey, there's a roll number here, and who's the descendants off of that? Hey, let's test that person's blood and see how much DNA comes out of that original bones that sit in Berkeley. Why isn't this happening? Why is it that I stand alone, a part of a tribe that has been scattered to the wind over some land that I no longer possess, have control of, even though my ancestors lived on that land? And because, one of the other ladies had stated that we had to assimilate, we had to move off. My grandfather had to move off of that reservation because no electricity was brought to there. No water was brought to there. So we assimilate, we move off. But then, we'll give this land over here to this other tribe. And then that tribe says, well, we're going to take your ID because we can't get a casino under our ID, under their ID. So it's really kind of weird. This whole thing is very nerve-wracking, and it's kind of crazy that we're all cousins somehow, but we're all divided seriously. And you guys talk about your little numbers and your, number 9 of 3FC or whatever number it is, but really you're not getting down to the point that I too am Native American. But nobody acknowledges that, and we fight against what this gentleman stated, against a big, huge casino that has big, deep pockets, even though they don't have proof from you guys that they have BIA identification. When is that going to stop? When is the anthropologist going to show up on my door and say, who are you and how are you connected? Oh yeah, you were federally recognized, but they stole it. Oh yeah, that's in court. Who really cares? We don't have control of that. So it seems very weird, and I may not have all my knowledge correct because, like I said, I'm just a peon Native American. I'm a fraction of 1% of the population. And just like he said just a second ago, if the bloodline is not tracked, we too will be distinct, just like that dinosaur. And there's nothing else we can say about it, because here we're under a governing rule, the government and their red tape.
Good
so
girl.
Everybody needs to fill out their little forms and submit it, and they may or may not get it back.
Must be one
And
there.
as goes for TANF, okay, if there's non-gaming funds for non-gaming Indians, where is it? Where do I sign up for it? How do these big casinos get money and the peons do not? I could have swore Californians voted in a rule that non-gaming Indians would be helped. Okay, how can I be helped? When I apply for TANF and TANF is run by a casino that stole my name and they kicked me off the TANF, how does that help me? Who do I go to? How does my voice get heard? So I just hope everybody here, we can all like unite and say, hey, we're Native American, even though your bloodline is over there, even though we're cousins. I just hope that something good will come out of this beyond the people with deep pockets that can pay off other board of supervisors, they can pay off this, they can buy that, and they can sweep the little ones under the carpet. I too am Native American.
Oh.
Thank you. If I'm going to address you, I feel it's respectful for me to stand in front of you and look you in the eye. Biyo no on Hushbion. My name is Chris Lobo. I'm a member of the Wyandabana Hushman Nation.
I'm thankful to be here this afternoon to participate with the Honorable Assistant Secretary, staff, and I applaud his courageous effort and make meaningful and necessary adjustments to CFR 83.7. This might belabor a little of you if you don't know what I'm talking about. I'm going to give you a little trip down memory lane with OFA over the last 10 years. My professional experience in dealing with the OFA began 9 years ago during elected service to my tribe. Though my family's tribal lineage has been under review in the department's broken process for more than 30 years. During this time, I witnessed the department's negative influence on multiple petitioners, including activity which promoted the creation of rival petitions, splinter groups through the acceptance of secondary letters of intent, coupled with wrongful designation of sub-petitions and interested party status even decades after an initial filing event. This activity by the department has on numerous occasions undermined a petitioner's ability to dissolve disputes internally and ultimately perpetuates community fractures within a tribe. For the department and the public, this creates confusion, complication, and a perpetual wasteful spending of department and tribal funds. Further, the failure of the OFA staff and its leadership to appropriately and fairly apply the regulations pertaining to evidentiary standards of reasonable likelihood of the validity of the facts is a continued major concern. Simply put, and even with the Supreme Court's interpretation of a reasonable likelihood, it remains an unknown quantity for petitioners when attempting to qualify the evidence to include in a documented petition. For example, the OFA misled petitioner 84A in a face-to-face technical assistance meeting attended by the department's leader Lee Fleming and the designated research team Wendy Brown, Francis Flavin, and Jan Earl regarding a significant piece of evidence which pertained to criteria B and C leadership, an 80-year-old obituary which clearly identified the Captain Jose Dorm, captain of the tribe, his granddaughter who's sitting back in the back row. Just prior to the documented Chief Clarence Lobo's era along with the Indian community participation, which was my grandfather, 50-year era. Finally, after much valuable meeting and time debate with the department, the tribe produced a digital copy and presented it once again during the same technical assistance meeting. OFA then conceded to the qualitative and quantitative information contained therein and stated that a reasonable likelihood had been met, assuring the petitioner that the petitioner should consider the criteria met for that tribe for that time period leading up to 1940, only to have this finding later rescinded in final recommendations to the ASIA with no explanation whatsoever. Pardon me. This same activity took place regarding even more objective pieces of evidence pertaining to the genealogical record for criteria E. Example, technical assistance meeting with OFA. Its staff only requested a sample of the membership genealogical record which documented the membership's ancestors' descent from the identified historical tribe who resided at Mission San Juan Capistrano from first sustained European contact beginning in 1776. 100% of the requested samples were approved by OFA. Genealogical staff, however, later during a recommendation to the ASIA, OFA in turn misled the Assistant Secretary Carl Arvin regarding the tribe's genealogical record, stating that it was incomplete and that it appeared that only 2% of the tribe's membership had passed. This evaluation if the department had been forthright, the tribe would have produced the voluminous genealogical record for every living member of the 1,941 members of my tribe, dating back to the mid-1700s, which was eventually submitted in the response to the misleading proposed findings. These passing percentages later grew from 2% to 67%, then to 75%. Passing of the nearly 2,000 member tribe, and after publication of the negative final determination, and would have moved well above the passing 80% threshold had the OFA not purposely attempted to disqualify previously approved key lineages, whom are here as well, attempting to sabotage the tribe, keeping the percentage below passing levels, and protecting its faulty report and recommendation. Let me wrap up right now. I got a few more comments I'm going to submit for the record, but I think it's important to acknowledge our elders. And here I saw Chief Cambria in the back, who's been fighting for her tribe for many years. And I want to say thank you for all you've done. I want to acknowledge Counterpart for standing up and speaking the way you did. I see there's a lot of people here in Indian country that have been fighting for their rights, and I see some people here that have been the biggest adversaries to federal recognition in legitimate tribes. And I want you to know that we're not going away. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dan Medina. I'm a city councilman for the city of Gardena in Southern California. I think I'll go to the front too, because the last thing you want to do is look back. First of all, thank you for allowing me to speak. And most importantly, I want to congratulate all of you, because the education I got today, I'm sure I'll never ever learn in school or in high school or in college. For the sake of education and for the sake of knowledge of the general population in California, you truly, truly need to get this out there. Because we're a small group of people that know your history, but for a non-Indian like myself, I need to be educated as well. I'm a city councilman for the city of Gardena, and we voted to be opposed to this legislation. But the more I'm learning, the more I'm realizing that a lot needs to be done. There are some unjust things that have happened and continue to happen. To address the amount of money I make a month, you probably spend more than that in gas. I make a whopping $600 a month as a city councilman. But I consider myself a servant, and I just want to convey the message to yourselves that our city is opposed to that. We're the only city in Southern California that has 2 casinos, and they contribute to 20% of the revenue in our city. We're a small city of 60,000 people, excuse me, and they pay the taxes on what they make to partner with our city, which we are not exactly a wealthy city. And I'm and to verify the fact that our city did pay for my flight and the room. Well, you gotta tell it like it is. Well, when you make $600 a month, what do you do? Okay. Yes, absolutely. But, well, we're both on the same planet, and we have to live together about that. So I thank you all for educating me on the process of what you're going through. So in the lines of the old days, don't shoot the messenger, but I am bringing up the fact that our city is against that, and we need to, from what I'm listening, is we need to straighten out what some of the rules you have with regards to federal recognition. I don't know if this will make it stronger or weaker, but from what we've gathered down south is that it would make it weaker. So what we're asking is if you could have more meetings, both not only in Southern California, but also further north, because I know there's other tribes further north. And well, that's exactly my point, is that you need to expand up and down California so everyone can come by and not have to pay for a flight or have the city pay for the flight. And they can come by and give their own opinions with regards to how they feel about this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I would like to clarify, we definitely have received the request for additional consultations, thank you. And I'd also like to clarify, the intention of the proposed rule is not to weaken the criteria. We still plan, we want this process to be a robust process and maintain its stringency. The changes in the proposed rule are really intended to help reduce the documentary and administrative burden, both on the petitioner's side and on the federal government side, so that we can get petitioners through the process in a more expeditious manner. Do we have additional comments?
Hello, I'm Ken Woodrow, Chair for the Wicksaw Indian Tribe. Earlier today, you mentioned a memorandum from, is the memorandum 37029 dealing with under-federal jurisdiction that you created in the Solicitor's Office?
I don't think we've talked about that yet, but yes, the Solicitor's Office did an opinion, so.
Thank you.
We have a queue here. There's several people in the queue.
So since we have about 45 minutes left, could we just get a show of hands to see about how many speakers want to speak that haven't spoken yet? Okay, so if we keep people to 2 to 5 minutes, I think we should be able to get through.
Selekia Satsa Komean, Enito Hesa Papa, Pani Yosha Dehe, Name Equipa Lechi Pani, Opa, Iwano Mansa, Nishmat Yoki Kanopsha Masana Tao Easy, Asia Bami Chaka Samuatan, Evehe Hatan, Alanicos to know an explanation, Evehe Hatan, the greater Monterey Bay Area. Any Namis Nimasia After Seleki, Ami BIA for being here, for allowing us to speak our minds and open all of your hearts. I believe this to be only the beginning of change, but these changes are not perfect because they still close the doors to many Native people. I pray that the Creator touches the hearts of these people who come to speak against us, because they and their ancestors came to our homeland. We were always here, and yet they find that they need to speak against us once more. They spoke against us in the missions, they spoke against us in the gold rush, they spoke against us always, and they continue to speak against us. But that's not going to stop us. We are here, we will stay here, and we will continue to teach our children. As I have my grandson here, who is keeping notes and hopefully learning how they continue to hate us. They hate us because we love our land, because we love this earth. And I can only say, don't give up. I don't care how many times these people look at us and say, we're the city government. My ancestors have been here forever. All of our ancestors have been here forever. And all we can do is continue to fight, continue to teach our children, and one day we will have that justice and have our homeland back.
Hello, my name is Rudy Ortega Jr. I'm Fernandino Zatavi. I'm from San Fernando Mission. I'm the Vice President of the tribe. I'm also the Chairman of the Los Angeles City County Indian Commission. On the commission, we voted and actually abstained from comments on the regulations took a neutral stance. Our commission is formed of federally recognized people, and also some who are state acknowledged or acknowledged through the state through some departments. But acknowledgement is a fighting crisis that we fought in our tribe. We have a letter in 1971 that says here's 5 requirements to move the tribe into trust, the land into trust. So we have a lot of history here, but I think more importantly what I wanted to talk about and give comments is everyone's talking about the cities we're here representing and some of the federally recognized tribes. We need to give them the history. What's the bureau? What's the problem with BIA, with OFA actually? How long does it take? Why does the tribe sit there so long? Because these folks have different issues. Federally recognized tribes have different issues that they're fighting to move trust that they've lost into trust lands. Different federal rights. My tribe, we fight equal. BIA gave us equal cases in Oklahoma, here in California. We fight cultural resources. We work with developers. Some of the federally recognized tribes support us when it's the federal government agencies working with them. They bring us to the table for 106 consultation on cultural resources because we're the cultural tribe of the region. So there's a lot of ways that even as a non-recognized tribe, we still have recognition. One thing we have is sovereignty. We retain sovereignty. We just don't have an agreement with the federal government at the moment. So without that, we need to have that agreement with the federal government. Until one day, one of the tribes was not acknowledged, challenges that, and say, I'm gonna move land into our own property. There's no way you can stop us. Reverse it. Because it hasn't been challenged yet. So that's one thing I would like to see is that, I know you guys are working hard, maybe a little history, like it says, tribes talked about the burden of proof, the difficulty. My tribe raised every penny ourselves for acknowledgement. It took my father, he's passed already, but we fought a long time for it. And it takes us a lot of dollars to raise it. We have to be creative. We don't have gaming facility. It wasn't in our interest when we started asking for land and trust because it wasn't part of it. Until the big boom of gaming facilities came in, then that's a bit tough. Yeah, it's an economic development, but as I said before, it's still a hurdle. Tribe is landless. Our tribe's landless. We have to go through a petition again, just like go for acknowledgement to move land and trust. Secondly, then we have to ask the state for a gaming compact, which I don't understand why tribes are doing it today anyways. Is their land. I mean, they're taxing. I thought tribes don't get taxed on a different type of levy. But that's a different conversation for acknowledging tribe. But that's all I would like to say is that perhaps a little history of the process and why tribes are suffering so hard, and so that these folks, these cities, tribes, can understand what we're going through. Thank you.
Homoyabemi, Shelley Abemi, Nishnabemi. I'm Shelley Cover, Tribal Council Secretary of the Nevada City Rancheria. We're up in the foothills of Northern California. And because we are a terminated rancheria, we are terminated by Congress during the termination era, we are barred from this process. I like some other revisions that are happening, one of which is when you petition, your intent to petition to the federal government, we were very naive because a lot of you guys can tell there are so many different paths that a tribe can possibly take to recognition. It's very confusing if you don't have advisors and people who understand law or understand any of this thing. It's so intimidating. And it takes generations to learn and understand and find your own path. Each rancheria is different. Some are terminated, have come back, some game, some don't, some maybe will never be recognized again. So while we're barred from this process because we're terminated, we're also barred from our court case because of the statute of limitations right now. And I've always been thankful on one hand that we didn't have to go this process because I feel so bad for so many of you tribes. They're generations have been on these lists waiting and trying to pull together their knowledge to understand the process, to fit these criteria, to make the timelines and all these things that I don't think are natural to us because we're an oral society. So, you know, it's only been a few generations that we are actually can understand this process. So, but I'm sitting today, we can meet the criteria for this process, but we're barred from this process. So I just wanted to say that we have talked and said that any improvement on the process
is a good improvement, but there's so far to go. The people from the city, I like what this man said, that he's been educated today. You can't even walk in another tribe's shoes. I mean, our world is our world. When we came down and spoke with the tribes who had, for this process, that have gone through the mission system, the missions is something we don't understand. We didn't have missions up in the hills, and our whole reality is the gold rush. And they didn't really have the gold rush in their timeline. I was like, how can you not have, that's sort of where our life stopped up there. And each tribe is so different, and a process that is so, it's a big government. What can you do? I think any improvement is good. But you're trying to squish these, especially California Indians, you're trying to squish them into this box. And how it even works at all is just beyond me. And so I'm always happy any tribe that gets recognized. I hate to get all, weird about genocide and all that kind of stuff. I know it's stuff nobody likes to hear, but it's due to the people. It's real. And I have a lot of non-native friends who don't understand, and so I'm an interpreter. I'm the middle person. I will tell a story 50 ways if I can get one person to, like you said, soften the heart a little bit. And sometimes it's just educating people. It's like, oh, well, I thought, if more tribes got recognized, there would be more casinos. You don't know about some of these tribes who have generations. Some of us leaders who have no money, we take the responsibility of our entire families and our entire tribe. We carry that with us every day. And, it's part of economics is a reality because we're Americans. It's manifest destiny and all that good stuff. It's part of reality too. So, but again, we support any changes that make it easier. The confusion, this process is broken. And so any changes that can help clarify some of this stuff, I think is good.
I've heard a lot of people today, and I'll be brief. And the reason why I wanted to speak, because I didn't want to speak before, but now I want to speak, because I thought of my daughter. She's 10 months old. I'm 28 years old, and we're not federally recognized. And our tribe has been going through the federal recognition process for over 30 years. I know people roll their eyes or getting tired of hearing everyone's story, but you know what? This is our life that we live, and the fact that we can't get services and things like that, so we're affected. This might be your job, and I understand that, but this is my life. And I'm just asking you guys, because we've already been through it for 30 years, how much longer do we need to go? These sound amazing to me, the fact that these are changing, and that we're having a conversation now, but it's been 30 years, and longer for other tribes. So what do you guys anticipate the length of turnaround for this? Because even if you were to cut it in half, that's still 15 years. So I'm just wondering what you guys think, that how long this will take if all these go through and things start moving. What do you think the best time?
I don't think we have an estimate because it will vary, I think, on the complexity of each case and petition, but the changes are intended to move petitions through the process in a quicker manner. But we don't have a timeline. But as I said, the intention is for it to be more reasonable.
Within the proposed regulations, in 83.32, there's a table, and it provides kind of more of a timeline.
I'm Brenda Garcia, and do occasional freelance writing in Los Angeles. So I would like to formally request an extension on the comment period. I believe it's extremely important, especially hearing from city council members who are here. I believe it's extremely important to have a meeting in the Los Angeles area
I also believe it's very important that the BIA understand that the California Indians are so diverse. We have in our state approximately 7 different climates. I believe there's only 7 climates in the world, something like that. Am I correct? In our one state, you have basically every single climate. We have so many different Indians. And I specifically am aware of the Mission Indians and, you know, atrocities that occurred with them. As a bystander, a freelance writer, an information gatherer, I've gathered a lot of information over the last several months. You can find a lot of it online, and some of it is from the individuals here. There have been extreme atrocities to the Indians. There's been genocide. There's been theft of land. And our nation is not looking at that as, not looking at it for what it is. I know the BIA is changing. This is wonderful that you're considering new regulations. I have to state for the city councils that are here that a lot of, I don't know everything that they have to deal with because of the casinos, but I know that there's a lot of greed. A lot of greed that would want individuals to stop regulations becoming more reasonable for individuals who suffered great losses. And so obviously I'm requesting that with these meetings there's more information. So there's a great lack of information from city councils that came to this meeting. They obviously have not read the entire document for federal regulation, for federal recognition. They haven't read the documents, nor or can they understand what the changes entail or what they mean. And actually, in my personal opinion, how my point is they're not going to make a huge difference for a lot of the tribes. The rules and regulations are very stringent for these individuals to prove that they existed as a tribe to begin with. And finally, if we look at humans, human nature, if we look at the Jews and the genocide, if we look at the Armenian Jews, the Russians, there are so many. If you look at civil rights movements, it's only since the 70s that the tribes really felt as if they were able to speak out when the civil rights movements occurred. So as a Caucasian white from Germany who has no interest in the tribal recognition or not, our nation needs to look at the discrimination and prejudice against these individuals who had their land stolen, who are working 30 plus years to prove that their land was initially their land. And one other comment is, someone made a comment on, anyway, it hurts other tribes. I'm not exactly sure how that's possible. I don't know who said that, but regarding Larry Roberts, who's not here, I'm sure he's proactive for tribes because he's witnessed and listened to the individuals who are in this room who very specifically have suffered, and their families and their genealogy and their lineage has suffered. Their grandmas and grandpas have suffered through this. Congratulations to Larry Roberts.
My name is Kristen Mackey, and I have been assisting the Miwok tribe of El Dorado County, originally from Shingle Springs Reservation, for the last 8 years. I also speak on behalf of Darlene Nurovich, an elder in the tribe who has given me the authority to speak as if it is her voice. I have a question for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The question is, when a tribe's identity has been stolen, what recourse do they have? We are not in a situation where we can apply for recognition. We already have recognition. We are IRA voters, Indian Reorganization Act voters, in 1934, and we have all documents, identification, and that identity was stolen so that those people could make a casino. They are the Verona Band of Homeless Indians, the Sacramento Verona Band of Homeless Indians. And when they were not able to get a casino because they were told you don't have federal recognition, they suddenly became the Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians. And this is all documented. What does a tribe do at that point? I would like the Bureau of Indian Affairs to give an answer as to what we as a tribe can do at this point.
Within the regulatory process, other petitioners, unrecognized groups, tribes, can get involved and submit comments. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It doesn't answer my question. I'm asking, we're not wanting to submit. We want to know what we can do to have our identity back. What can we do? We're not submitting for recognition. We want to know, what do we do now that our name has been stolen? What can the BIA do for us to get our recognition recognized? What can we do?
I guess I would just say, if you have suggestions for how that can be handled better in the process, please submit comments.
I don't understand what you're saying.
I think your situation that you're describing is really unique, and we're trying to.
No, it's not. It is unique. It is unique, and that's why I'm asking. What can we do? It's a unique situation. They paid off, like my friend and tribal member Aaron Young said. They had the money to pay off the Board of Supervisors. They made contract with City Council. They bought everybody off in El Dorado County. What do we do now?
So I think if you, I can't answer that for you, but if you have suggestions on how the regulations can address situations like that, we will be very open to considering them.
Are you saying that I should come up with suggestions?
Yes.
Or anybody in the room?
We're open to anyone's suggestions, yes.
Okay, I really want, that would be great for other ideas, but I want to know how the BIA can help us. Thank you.
Miriam, my name's Olivia, and I'm a member of the San Luis Band of Mission Indian from northern San Diego County. And I just want to say thank you, first of all, for being here and giving us all the chance to give our comments. And I'm speaking on behalf of my tribe. We're Lisanio people, and we support these proposed changes and all that the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs has proposed, and we see this as well-reasoned and consistent with precedent. And we especially support that the 83.8 previous federal acknowledgement is still included, and that there's the ability for us to comment on that. And it's especially important for us because we didn't just start this process in the 1980s. We've been dealing with it since we signed the Institute. And so we really see this as a way of continuing our quest for federal acknowledgement and for being a sovereign nation with those government-to-government privileges. And I just want to say again, thank you so much for being here.
Good afternoon. I'm Kim Oliveros-Rioni, the elected tribal secretary of the Juaneño Band of Mission Indians, the Hashima Nation. I'm hopeful that the outcome of all the public hearings and comment hearings will lead to an improved set of regulations in the process of obtaining federal recognition of an Indian nation. like to address a few of your questions regarding the proposed changes to the current regulations. I feel that the proposed appeal process should go before a totally independent agency for review, and not to the agency's OHA. However, should you choose to keep the appeal hearing at the OHA, then only an administrative law judge appointed under Section 5 U.S.C. 3105 should be allowed to make a judgment on an appeal, and not an administrative judge or an attorney designated by the director of the OHA. An administrative law judge who is separate and apart from the BIA would be the best choice, not someone who reports either directly or indirectly to the Assistant Secretary. With your permission, I would like to ask several questions regarding current petitioners who have been reviewed, but whose decision has not become final and effective. Where would these petitioners be placed in line for review once the new regulations are approved and adopted? Would there be a window in which to submit an entirely new petition? And with that resubmission, what would the new timeline for review look like? Will templates on how to submit evidence to meet criteria be available to assist tribes? With regards to membership criteria, the regulation reform allows, quote, other records or evidence, end quote, to be submitted to establish a person or their ancestor as a member. Would DNA evidence be accepted for some members lacking official United States vital records? In conclusion, I would like to say I am grateful for the opportunity to speak to you today on the record. Gratitude turns what we have into enough. It turns denial into acceptance and chaos into order, confusion into clarity, and strangers into friends. On the Lord.
Thank you. We do have a section in the proposed rule that addresses how current petitioners will be treated.
In 83.7, those that have submitted documented petitions have, under the proposed rule, are able to choose which set of regulations they want to proceed under. The way that the proposed rule stands now, basically the order in which OFO will look at each petition is by date of submitting the documented petition. And the current proposed rule doesn't address DNA evidence, but if that's something that you feel like the department should add, please, if maybe this was your comment, or submit additional written comments on that.
Mono, name is Angela Williams Eddy. I'm with the Mono Lake Kazinicas out of Levina, California. Here with my father, Richard Williams, also a tribal member. Our story is like many in here. We've been doing this for almost 40 years, trying to get recognized. And like I said, we're from Levina, California, which Independence, Lone Pine, Bishop, Big Pine, also Coville, Bridgeport, surround our whole land, our town. They're all federally recognized except for us. And Independence had an executive order from the president in 1915 and 1916 to be recognized as a tribe. We have the support of the tribes, which Independence is one of them. The council chair supports us, recognizes us. Bishop, their tribe recognizes us. It supports us. I'm an employee at the Bishop Palace Casino. I was recognized there as an Indian, got a job. All of these towns that surround Levina are tribes in the valley. Death Valley is also a tribe, was recognized down there. Their office is in Bishop, California, which is 45 minutes from our town. They've all been recognized. We've been working on putting our paperwork in, keeps getting sent back.